Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to those of you that are on Facebook, those of you that are on YouTube. Please take a moment and share, subscribe, like, help us get the learning all around to as many people as possible. In addition, YouTube has certain restrictions if you're a channel of less than 1,000 subscribers. So if you subscribe and help us reach to 1,000, more than 1,000, it'll help us greatly. Education. When you want to ensure that your children follow in your path, or your children behave the way you anticipate from them, they adhere to your values, what's the way to do that? What's the way to ensure that it actually happens? It's not just a question of education or spirituality, because I want my children to be as adherent to the Torah way as I, more than me, and really stick to this way of life. But it's also a health issue, an emotional issue. Very often we say things and we hope that it doesn't have a negative impact on the child. You're going to say something to your child. You're going to try to discipline them. Are you being too harsh? Are you saying it in a very nice way? Will this be something that's going to stick with them forever? Is it going to impact them in a negative way and they'll have a hard time later dealing with it? You mean well. You want that they should change a certain behavior. You want them to improve and get rid of a negative habit. But the way you say it and what you're saying may have negative consequences. People deal with a lifetime of therapy or trouble or internal struggle because of something that a parent said to them that was negative. And I'm not sure that the parent meant bad. Maybe they even meant good. But the way it came across was negative. And it hurt them in a way that's very, very difficult to repair. So when you ask yourself, what could I do, or what's the best method of educating my children? It's not just spiritually, religiously. For their emotional well-being, how do you do it? What do you do? And it's very relevant to this week's Parsha, because from this Parsha, which is all about lighting the menorah, we learn some very fundamental principles about education and detailed methods of what to do and what not to do. The Torah says when you light the menorah, when you light the candles, where it should be lit, how it should be lit, etc. But Torah doesn't use the regular word for lighting. Lighting would be tadlik or tatzit. Light, ignite. That's the proper way if you want to light anything, a fire, a candle, whatever. Torah, however, here, when it talks about the menorah, uses a different term. It uses a term called behaloischa, when you'll elevate, when you'll pick up, when you'll lift the candles. Now, it means to illuminate, but it's not the way that you usually say to light. And the reason is, Rashi tells us, because when the Kohen had to light the menorah, it's not enough just to take the torch and touch it to the candle. It has to be done in such a way that the fire goes up on its own. When the torch leaves, the fire is so lit that it's catching on, it's going upwards to the rest of the wick. That's how you have to light the menorah. And when it comes to education, we use the same principle. It's not enough to get a child, a student, to just follow what you said. I said you should eat with manners, eat with manners. I said you should brush your teeth in the morning. My dear child, you better do it. Whatever the education is, it's not enough when you say do it and they follow your instruction. What you need is they have to be a burning fire on their own. That when you're out of the picture, when you're not involved in the details of their life, because you can't always be, they still do it. They want to do it, They feel it's the right thing to do, and maybe they even are inspiring others to do that. So true education is like the menorah. When you light it, it has to be able to suffice on its own, or it has to burn on its own. And the educational method that Hasidus teaches us is along the very same lines. You need to be able to get them illuminated, to turn them on to the level that they're doing it on their own. And this is not a new concept. Shlomo HaMelech, 3,000 years ago, shared this concept. What did he say? He says, Chanech lenar, educate a child in their way, or according to his path. And if you do it according to his path, then when he gets older, he won't leave your teaching. If you're going to come to a child and say, okay, here's the method that I like, here's my approach, I need you to do this my way, and you instill in them certain things, but your method, your path, your personality, then you're not ensured that when he gets older or she gets older, they're going to stick to it. Once you left them, they're gone. And there's a way to fix that. There's a way to do it right. There's a way to ensure that the child not just listens to you, but lives it. It becomes theirs. And the way to do that is to educate them in their path, in their method. No child, no two children are the same. Every child has a certain strength, a certain thing that works for them. Some children do very well with one method of education. Other children don't. And you need to work with them. You have to empower them to do it on their own. There was a teacher in Israel, probably 40 years ago. His name was Alexander bin Nun. And this Alexander was a very talented teacher, loved his students, was very, very involved in teaching and preparing for the class, and he was a great educator. Unfortunately, he had some type of illness and in his throat, and he wasn't able to speak. He was basically hoarse for months. He couldn't speak. And it really bothered him. He can't teach anymore. He can't be there for his students. He can't lecture to them, give over the class. He was bothered. And he was very bothered because I'm doing a positive thing. I'm trying to teach kids. That's my life, he says. And now I'm stuck. And out of frustration, he sat down and he wrote a letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he sends this letter to the Rebbe expressing his disappointment and really his hurt of why would God do this to me that I can't educate my students anymore. And the Rebbe wrote back that obviously the pain is understood, but if you really want to understand what happened, the Rebbe said, the goal here is that you should fulfill the ultimate type of education. You have the opportunity now to take these kids and have them speak instead of you. Come into the classroom, have them read, have them translate, have them teach. You're giving them the opportunity. You're using this period that you're having some troubles and you can't do it. You're using this to enable them to. And that's the true education, because now they're burning candles on their own. Now they're a light, and not just teacher said, I repeat, teacher said, I memorize, but they're actually doing it. And it's a letter printed in the Igros Kodesh, in the Rebbe's responsa in volume 18. But now the question is, how do we reach that level? What's the secret? How do we educate a child that they should be a shalheves, they should be a flame that burns on its own? What's the trick? What's the secret? How do you do that? Before I explain that, let's address another issue. And why are candles or fire used to explain education? What's this idea? Why is a candle spiritual and somehow fire is associated with light? And let's spend a little bit of time to understand that, because we have Shabbos candles, right? Unfortunately, they're memorial candles. Heaven forbid someone needs. The point is that you have the parallel and the association of fire with spirituality. Somehow there's this connection. And the question is why? In the Beis Hamikdash, Aaron HaKohen was a little bit disappointed about some of the tasks that he was not able to do and what his privileges he has in the temple. And Hashem said, don't worry. Your ability and what you do, which is lighting the menorah, is greater than the other, the Nesim, the leaders of the tribes. Why? Because you get to light the menorah. And lighting the menorah is huge. It's amazing. That's the best thing you could do. Why is lighting the menorah so great? Think about it. They brought many things, many offerings in the temple. Menorah was done once, and it's a pretty quick process. Why is that considered to be amazing? That's the symbol. That's the proof that what you're doing and your way of serving Hashem is greater because you light the menorah. Big deal. Why is the menorah so great? And the Ramban, Nachmanides, says, I am not clear on this. Why did Hashem comfort? Why did Hashem soothe Aaron HaKohen by telling him, oh, don't worry, you light the menorah? Big deal. You know, on Yom Kippur, there were certain offerings, certain tasks that were done in the temple, which only the Kohen Gadol could go in to the holiest place on earth, which is the Holy of Holies, on the holiest day. And Hashem doesn't say, hey, Aaron, don't worry about the Nesim, the leaders of the tribes, they're bringing certain offerings. You're not, because you go into the Holy of Holies. He doesn't say that. He says, don't worry. Why? Because you go into you light the menorah. Why is the menorah so special? So there's several explanations of why the menorah is special and why fire is associated with spirituality. Let's look at some examples. First of all, when Hashem wants to reveal himself, not literally, but to convey a message, you find multiple times that it's done with fire. For example, Moshe Rabbeinu was in the desert, and the first communication that he has with God is at a burning bush. Elijah the prophet, with a tremendous display in Har Carmel, in the Mount Carmel, what was that? It was also fire that came down. Fire has that concept. And in Kabbalah, anytime we want to speak about God or God's energy or his flow into this world, we also use the word light, or. And the reason is because light, fire, is the most spiritual physical thing. It's physical, it's matter, but it's the most spiritual of matter. It's just what it is. You could touch it, kind of, but it's not coarse like other material. It's fire, it's a gas. Not really, but essentially. A candle, in addition, Tanya tells us, always goes upwards. If you take a flame, take a match, take a lit candle, whatever it is, you're going to see the flame goes upwards. If you turn it upside down, it'll still go upwards, the flame. That's compared to our neshama, our soul. It also yearns to go upwards. It yearns to connect to Hashem. It's a spiritual thing that you look to come to your source. You look to connect to where you came from, to your essence. In addition, the light doesn't have any format. It doesn't have any shape, fire, right? If you light a candle in whatever place you'll put it, it'll jump, it'll move. It doesn't have a particular shape or form of its own. It's not so physical. In addition, and this is one of my favorites, a fire is not limited, right? If you have one candle, how many candles can you light with one candle? An infinite amount, right? How so? You don't have that with water. If a glass of water, there's only whatever it is, 8 ounces. When it's done, it's done. If you're going to pour it to a bunch of different people, they'll all have less. And you'll have less. It's limited. But if you have fire and you light all different candles, you could go on and on and on. There's no problem with that. You don't lose any of your fire. That's spirituality. It's infinite. There's no end to it. So because of these reasons, fire is compared to spirituality, and it's parallels the neshama, and we use that as a spiritual concept. And by the way, now we understand why in Shul we light candles, why on Shabbos we have to have candles, why are candles so central to Jewish life. It's for that reason, because it's a very spiritual thing. The Gemara tells us a story. There was a man, a great sage by the name of Rav Huna. And Rav Huna passed by the house of Rav Ovin. I'm not going to test you on these names, but Rav Huna passed the house of Rav Ovin, and he saw that he had very tall candles. Shabbos candles were very, very tall. They were honoring the Shabbos nicely. And he said, you know, these people, Rav Ovin and his wife, they're going to merit nachas, joy from their children. And out of them will come great candles, great luminaries. Why? One for each of the parents. But the point is that as a result of them honoring the Shabbos with candles, they merited to have two tremendous children, Rav Idi and Rav Chia, who were great sages and taught a lot of Torah and illuminated the world. And the question is, why is children being scholars, great people, associated with candles? What's the idea? So if we understand the connection between candles and spirituality, we can understand the idea between candles and education. And to answer our question, should you punish a child, or what's the best way to educate a child? How do you get the child to follow in your footsteps in the way that you want them educated? What's the best way to do it? I want to share a story that I love, and I've shared this many times. Not too long ago, a couple decades, there was a family in Crown Heights in Brooklyn whose 17-year-old son got into a fight with the parents, whatever the issue was, and stopped talking to them, and he moved out and rented a place or moved in with some friends in Manhattan. The parents were devastated. 17-year-old son, up until that point, more or less, was religious, was following the ways of the family. They were involved. They were doing all the regular stuff. And now he just dropped out of school, left the house, moved out. Who knows what's going to be with this kid? Who are his friends going to be? Who is he going to end up with? And the mother particularly was very, very distraught. And she really couldn't handle it. And she decided to go to the Rebbe and ask him. So she got a yechidus, private audience. She goes into the Rebbe and she pours out her heart. And the Rebbe said, I want you to invest. I want you to dedicate. I want you to really, really put an effort in your Shabbos table. Shabbos meal in your house, work on that table. She went home, she discussed it with her husband, and they decided they're going to make their Shabbos meals the best experience ever. On Sunday, she sat down with her children and she asked, what's your favorite food? And she took notes. This child loves hummus, that child loves horseradish, this child loves salmon, gefilte fish, whatever it was. Challah with seeds, without seeds, water challah, egg challah. She figured out each child what their favorite food is. Then she went and she got a new tablecloth, or she ironed the old one and really, really crisped it out. She asked her friends for some advice on decorating. Together with her husband, they hired a painter. And every week they were improving their Shabbos experience. Best foods, the food that the kids love. They upgraded their dining room with fresh paint. They made sure that every light bulb there was working. They cleaned it up. They made it look very nice. They got some flowers. They really made their Shabbos table nice. A couple weeks later, they got linen napkins. They managed to get some silverware. They matched up the napkins to the plates and really made a beautiful Shabbos table. The kids loved it. But one day, one of the siblings is talking to the 17-year-old that ran away from home, is living in Manhattan on his own. And they told him, you got to come home. We haven't seen you in so long. Come by. And he says, I hate it. So what do you hate? Come for Shabbos meal. He says, Shabbos meal is the worst part of the week. He says, why? He says, look, Dad falls asleep by the table usually halfway through. He's exhausted from the week. Before that, him and Mom are arguing about whatever. Everyone's irritable. The food's not all that great anyways. And I don't like it. It's not a fun experience. Plus, I get criticized and this and that. And his brother or sister, whoever it was, says, you won't recognize this place. Shabbos is the best meal of the week. We all have the foods that we like. Every week there's another dessert. It's like a wedding on a weekly basis. What are you talking about? Dad, I don't know, maybe he takes a nap during the day. He always has a nice story to share. Everyone is relaxed and calm. And he decided to come back. And he came just for a meal. And he stayed. And then he came the next week and he stayed. And he moved back in. What the Rebbe was telling this mother was, create an experience where Judaism is fun, where whatever you're trying to impart to your children is enjoyable. Don't force it on them. Now, obviously, you can't always let a kid do whatever they want, but keep this fundamental principle in your mind and really on the forefront of all of your behaviors and all of your discipline methods. What you're doing now, are you forcing the child, or are you developing within them an appreciation for whatever you're trying to impart? Okay, if you want your kid to brush their teeth, of course you have to get them to do it whether they want to or not. But if you could get them to enjoy the process, or at least to enjoy the results, then you're okay. Because at some point, you're not going to be there, whether they're off to camp or they're at someone else's house or you're busy. You're not going to get them always to do what you want. But if you could inculcate in them, and now they're a fire on their own that's burning on their own, then you got it. Make it fun. Make it enjoyable. You see, there's two general paths to education. There's one conventional method, and it's called habits, where you educate the child with good habits. This is how we eat. This is manners. We eat with a napkin. We eat with a knife. We clean up after ourselves. We make our bed in the morning. You educate the child with good habits. You say thank you. You say please. You clean up, whatever it is. And you hope that by giving them these skills, life skills, and habits, they're going to grow up that way. And they'll stick to them. Okay, some of them are a little bit harder to learn. Some of them, they don't pick up every single thing you tell them. But they have these habits, and it becomes a way of life. It's one method. The other method is get them to enjoy the process. Get them to appreciate it. Get them to like what they're doing. The Alter Rebbe, when he discusses the gifts that the Nesiim, the leaders of the tribes, brought when the Mishkan was inaugurated, the tabernacle in the desert, it says that they brought gold spoons or whatever. And he says, what's the connection to gold? And he said that gold, you have to, just like a person leans towards gold, you want gold, you like it. Our relationship with that temple has to be one of love, of appreciation, of desire. You want it. You don't do it because you have to. You want to show that you like it. And that's the key when it comes to education. If you have to punish, see, punishment is not a method of educating. Punishment or discipline is a piece in the process of education. It's not a method of educating. It's sometimes a necessary component. But proper education, the way it should look, is, of course, you have habits. Of course, there is discipline that exists. But your driving goal here is get the child to enjoy doing it. Get them to like whatever you want them to do. Maybe a little bit different than you, maybe a little different, their style, their method. But if you could get them to be a flame, a fire that burns on its own, then it'll be good. There's another story. The Gemara in Taanis, Daf Chav Daled Amud Aleph. It's 24a. It says a story about a Amira who came to a city who which didn't have any rain for a long time. It was a drought, which means hunger, which means terrible things. And they made a fast day. No one's going to eat or drink. And they're going to pray to God to forgive them, which was common in those days, to forgive them or to grant them rain. And people were praying and praying, and nothing worked. All of a sudden, one guy, didn't look too important, let's just say, walks up to the head of the synagogue, and he starts to lead the prayers. And he prays to God that we should bring rain. And all of a sudden, it gets dark. Look outside, there's clouds. And before you know it, it's raining, and it's pouring. And the drought was a thing of the past. And this Amoira, this sage, was thinking to himself, what in the world just happened here? We fasted. We prayed. Nothing worked. This guy goes up, and all of a sudden, it's raining. He went over to him and he says, my friend, what's your secret? How do you live your life? What is it that you merited that God listened to your prayer over all the fasting and everything else that was going on? So I'll tell you something. I'm a teacher, school teacher, cheder. I teach the kids in my house. I want to tell you I have two principles. Number one, I treat all kids equally. Doesn't matter if their parents are wealthy and they're paying me, or the parents are not wealthy and they never pay me. The child in my room, in my class, in his dining room, wherever he taught, is treated exactly the same way. I will put in the same effort, same investment, the same heart and soul if they're wealthy, if their parents are wealthy or not. Number one. Number two, in my yard, I have not a fish tank, but a pool of water with fish. And when a child doesn't want to learn, I bribe them. I tell them, if you finish learning this pasuk, if you finish learning this mishnah, if you finish the quota for today, you will be able to go out and feed the fish, play with the fish, whatever it is. And this is how I get them to do it. And the sage said, that is why Hashem is answering your prayers, for these two reasons. But I want to focus on the second reason. He was bribing the student. Teacher could have said easily, listen, you get into line or you're missing recess. You follow instructions or you're staying late. You do what I tell you or you're going to have to write 1,000 times, I will listen to my teacher. He didn't do that. He said, you know the fish tank, you want to do it, finish this, you'll do it. He brought the child to enjoy the process, to do it because he benefits from it, because he's going to gain from it, and not because if not, then you're going to lose out. If not, you're going to get hurt. And the Rebbe tells us that very often a parent, is faced with a dilemma, and the instinct is to tell the child either strongly or with discipline, and say, you better do this or else. If you're not going to listen to me now, you're not going on the trip, you're not getting that treat, no dessert for you, whatever it is. And we need to build the child. You have to look at the child, and instead of saying, don't be bad, don't misbehave, tell the child, you are such a good child. I expect a lot better from you. I know you, you're kind. You're not the type that would fight with your sister. You're not the type that would take something that's not yours. Come on, just give it back. What that does is the narrative that the child hears and what you're instilling in them is, I'm good. Look at it the other way. You tell a child, you're so terrible, I can't believe you did that. That's such a mean thing to do. You're so insensitive. You're selfish, right? What's going on in the child's mind is, oh, I'm selfish. I'm insensitive. I'm mean. And on a subconscious level, that's who I am. There are kind people. I'm not one of them. I heard from my parents so many times, right? But if instead what the child always hears is, someone like you, nah, it's not what you do. It's not becoming of you. You're so kind. You're so caring. I even give them an example of something that they've done. So you're cultivating their flame that it burns on its own. You're giving them the tools They start doing what you want and what you believe in, not because you force them, not only because of habit, not because they had no choice, because there's going to be some kind of discipline or consequence if they don't, but because they feel good about it. I'm a clean, organized person, so of course I'm going to clean up after myself. I am a nice person, so of course I'm going to share my toys. Now, obviously, this is an ongoing process. It's not a magic word or a bullet. It's a secret, though, that when you do something and you constantly heap praise, authentic, but positivity, and you talk to the child about their qualities and about their strengths, that's how they end up being a flame that burns on its own. That's how they end up being the child that actually doesn't need you to hold them down to do it, but you encourage them and help them. Let's wish everyone watching live and on the replay to have a lot of success in education. And in a sense, we're all children. And let's use positivity with ourselves, in educating ourselves, in instilling good habits in ourselves, in growing and developing. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't tell yourself, I'm so bad, I'm a failure, I messed up. Tell yourself, I have these qualities, I have certain gifts. Let me use them, let me grow, let me prove it to myself. Let me try to be better today than I was yesterday. And step by step to grow and to really be a flame, a fire onto others. Thanks for joining. Again, please subscribe, like, share, and hope to see you later. Sei gesund.